Hey, Chamber members, Alan Waters here, your Director of Marketing, Communications in the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce and your Words of Wisdom podcast. And today I'm joined by...
I'm Danny Flad with Flad Beverage Solutions, offering the best in installation and consulting for draft beer systems, wine on tap, nitro coffee, and more.
Awesome. Welcome to the podcast, Danny. First question I ask everybody, at least their first time on the show, what does success mean to you?
In the business world, I've always, I guess outside of that, success could be pretty subjective, but since it's a Chamber of Commerce thing, but
I mean, I really want to know both on the business and the personal side.
Well, I think both business and personally, okay, my motto's always been, what makes me happy is using my expertise, whatever field it may be in. I build draft systems, I play music, I do whatever, but to kind of identify people's expectations or their needs and exceed their expectations at that. I think if you take that model into any kind of customer service role, that'll be successful. Right?
And I think it's so much easier said than done. And I think that is sometimes where we see struggles, and you hit the nail on the head. The customer service piece, to me, at least, no matter what business you're in customer service to a degree. Of course, some things, but how do you go about making sure that you're not only, getting those needs, but going beyond their expectations when sometimes I think, at least from my perspective, you can walk in with a client that you've worked really hard to make sure you know what they're looking for, but their expectations in their own head may be higher than you're even prepared for.
Well, I think if you could sort of back up from that, right? The customer is always looking for something, but whether you're waiting tables in a restaurant or you're lobbyist in DC or whatever, I think the key is you're the expert in that field. So, I think, what is it? Steve Jobs said it's not the customer's job to know what they want. So not disrespectful to the customer,
right,
but in other words, if you're an expert in that field, the worst thing you can do is go back to, say, your boss and say, well, I did everything they told me they wanted to be done. That's, if you bring your car to a repair person and they're just like, they only wanted the tires changed. So
right.
No, it starts there, right? It starts when that auto technician or whatever, in my case, draft beer technician, says, hey, I know you didn't bring me here to tell me what to do.
Right.
It's my area of expertise. I've identified these things and then sort of triage that, right? That's good for customer service as well, is the triage effect of I know you're on a budget. I know your time is budgeted. What can we put a Band-Aid on? What's an immediate concern? What is just cosmetic?
Right.
And then they sort of get a feeling like, hey, this person's good at this versus me. I mean, they may have that attitude in the first place because they've only dealt with people that they had to tell what to do.
Right.
Right. So,
yeah, it goes a lot of different ways. Within that, how have you kind of developed that process of, I guess, making it so that it's real, it's legitimate. It's that I feel like so many people, especially in that kind of world of sales, they go, oh, this person's just trying to sell me these things. And that's not often the case. You mentioned the car and the mechanic. I feel like that's where people more often than not, do they leave the mechanic and go, I don't know if I really needed that. I think they were just trying to sell it to me. How do you make sure that you're really building that relationship so that they're not just going, oh, he's just trying to sell me?
It's kind of a seesaw effect, right? So you don't want to be contrived. You don't want to be the worst sales pitch is, hey, can you do me a favor? Like my boss really wants you to buy the, but on the flip side, you need a lot of planning, right? So the keys to something like sales, for instance, you want to have some relevant sort of generic intro that you can convert to whatever it is you're trying to sell. Man, it's a beautiful day, but the summer's getting warm, and you probably want to get your HVAC equipment looked at because, that's a nice transition. And again, you're anticipating something. And then you need a plan. You need to think about what objections are they going to have?
Right.
And what are the best sort of organic responses where you can overcome those objections. You want to highlight any of the assets, the profitability in the long run, et cetera. It's been my experience having trained salespeople and everything that preparedness is key. And closing is probably the most sort of intangible. Everyone can get to that point.
Right.
But then there's people that just
fully fumble.
It's like a basketball star or whatever. They can just close. And so I think anyone can get there, but that takes that's a lot harder to put your finger on.
Yeah.
And then the biggest one, even for great closers, is follow through. So did the product get delivered? Were they happy? Did they put it on the menu? Is it prominently featured?
Right.
A lot of people make the sale and then
they're done.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Somebody else's problem. And that's the last step, follow through, and you have to do it. And that's when people know. If you come back to check, if you come back to sample the product yourself or whatever the case may be, they know. If I call a client back and say, hey, I know everything was working perfect after the install, but it's just a courtesy check. Want to make sure it's all still pouring well.
And that's the part that I think you see a lot of people, especially early on career, that go, well, those pieces aren't making me money. I need to be going here. But I don't think that's true. I think that is the genuine care about people does go a long way. I talked to my wife recently. She was getting ready to offer a discount for services. And she was like, well, how do I tell people about this without it sounding salesy? And I was like, you don't. It's a sale. You have to be okay with selling things, but you have to find a way to make it a genuine, like you said, going through and doing those pieces. So tell me a little bit more about Flad Beverage Solutions, what you do and how you kind of got to there.
Yeah, well, it's a long story, but I'll try to be brief. So,
well, I don't want you to be that brief because we do have some time to fill. Let me start and say, in high school, take it back. What was it that you wanted to do? How did you end up really here from that trajectory?
That's an interesting story. So, in high school, I was very much into computer science, that sort of thing. And, compute, I don't want to date myself, but we're not talking about any kind of massive technology. I could do anything on a Commodore 64, or let me put it that way. I was kind of quiet, sort of introverted kid, so to speak, but I was lucky enough, didn't seem like it at the time, but when I went to college, I spent summers as a cashier. I grew up in New Orleans, and it was at a restaurant on Bourbon Street. And this was right before, the big POS systems, and now we have Toast and all that stuff.
Right.
But I was
You were Toast.
Back then, but I think a door guy called in or something like that, and so they had to put Danny, introverted computer science Danny, as the door person, right? And so I ended up becoming one of the door people there because it was better money, and I was
Right.
reliable. I would show up on time. I would not miss a shift. But it caused me to really break out of my shell and start to meet people from all over the world, and learn how to sort of read people or predict what whether they have any bad intentions or good intentions, or do they, and again, that's when you start to learn some of that. I've always observed people,
Right.
and sort of made notes mentally. And, I used to remember that the servers or greeting people or whatever, they basically would say the same sentence, but there's certain,
Inflections.
like if you say, are you going to need menus? Okay, or I could say, man, you guys look hungry. Now I'm saying the same thing,
Right.
but one is a call to action.
Yeah.
And the other one is like, are you really going to make me
Right. It's like we
walk
talked
all the way over there and get the menus?
Yeah. We talked with Christina Rose on her episode, and it's about the story branding and those pieces. But in that situation, that waiter said, "Are you hungry?" Meaning, "Hey, here's the problem. Here's how I can fix it."
I've anticipated.
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So
Are you guys here to watch the game?
right? Yeah.
They might not even know there's a game,
No, but
but they're like, yes, we are.
the
Thank
emotional
you.
connection. Yeah.
So, so I spent about 7 years there. My brother had married a lady that was from Blacksburg. They moved up here. We would visit all the time. My wife and I got married, had a kid, didn't want to raise them on Bourbon Street. And I believe Blacksburg had won Men's Health Best Place to Raise a Child.
Oh wow. Okay.
This would have been 2001, something like that. Excuse me. And so we moved up here. We packed up the truck and came up here. And I was a manager at PK's in Blacksburg for about 2.5, 3 years. And then I got recruited into the beer industry. And I worked about 20 years in the beer industry, from, sales to management to special events to, you name it. And it was a long ride. And then over the course, I worked in what's called the on-premise division. So you have off-premise, which is like you take the beer and go away, grocery store, convenience store, and then on-premise, you drink the beer on site. So bars, restaurants, hotels. And part of that, you have to learn how to do minor repairs and fix things, and you get certified. And I learned a lot of that stuff. And then when I worked for some great people at Valley Distributing and later at Blue Ridge Beverage. And I just kind of was ready to move on from the corporate world and broke out and started my own thing. I saw the need for this,
Right.
and decided to fill that need.
Yeah. And I see you still work with those people. It's just on a different level now. You're not the one bringing the beer. You're helping make sure the beer's flowing through so they can actually drink it.
Well, sure, and it works for everybody. A lot of the beer serving technology has gotten a lot more complicated. And as the beer wholesale, it's not unique to that industry, but like anything else, retail, whatever, it's consolidated a lot. And so whereas you used to have many wholesalers all in competition, there's fewer now. The roles have become more defined. So it used to be like, oh, it's the beer guy. He drives
Right.
the truck. He
does this, he does
fixes
that.
do you know anything about this? But it's become, as the area has developed and the wholesalers have consolidated, there's a dedicated salesperson. There's a dedicated technician, and that technician is bound where, through legitimate ABC laws and stuff, they can only do so much. They can only provide so much for retail. And there's a dedicated delivery force. And so there's a lot of gaps that can be filled
Yeah.
with whether it's you opened a restaurant, you need a new beer system put in, or you just wanted a preventative maintenance plan, where I can come by every 90 days and send you a written report. So sure, the opportunity was there,
Right.
and I just was in the right place at the right time.
So you mentioned how it's gotten more detailed. In my mind, not being from that at all, it's hard to understand because when I think of beer on tap, I think of, oh, he put the thing in, he tapped the keg, and that's it. What is the other pieces to that? Like, how is it getting more difficult?
Well, in the wake of the craft beer boom, people were wanting to put multiple brands on tap. And when you do that, you can't just have a little kegerator with
Right.
32 kegs in it or whatever. So you have to have a remote system. So the walk-in cooler where all the beer is far away from the actual taps.
Right.
And so then you need to have like a glycol chiller that kind of circulates antifreeze within the trunk line.
Okay.
And that keeps the beer cold from point A to point B. And so it starts to get kind of complicated, and you need to know exactly how much pressure and what blend of gas to use to get the beer exactly that far, and how much restriction you're going to need on the front end to slow that beer down. So
You're not just
it's
fire
not
hose.
just flying out of the yeah, exactly. So it's a lot of variables, but it's like anything else. Once you've done it enough, you kind of develop the right skill set. But I think you have to have that technician kind of not brain, but just joy, like the joy in problem solving.
Yeah.
And, so that's kind of a unique trait you might need for something like that.
And so I think back of the times that I've seen taps that have like the ice build up. Is that something that's supposed to be happening? Is that an issue when people see it?
Ice on the
So like I've seen it where it's they've got the taps on a line and it feels like there's I'm trying not to like specifically call out where this is, but they've got the taps all across and it looks like the bar that all the taps are on itself has a bunch of like ice buildup on it.
Oh, wow. That could be condensation, so anytime there's a drastic difference between the
Right.
ambient temperature and whatever temperature it is in there, condensation will form on the surfaces. They do make specific towers that are supposed to ice up.
Okay.
Like the Cobra Tower. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but they're pretty cool. It's a draft beer tower, and it's shaped kind of like a cobra that's about to strike.
Interesting.
And the actual, I believe it's like 27-degree glycol flows through there and
Just
frosts it up. There is an account here in Christiansburg, a theater, and its tower is designed to freeze solid.
That's the one I was wondering about actually. So yeah.
So yeah, it's that place is supposed to be
It's supposed to. Okay.
frozen solid, and whenever it's not, I get a phone call. And,
Well, awesome. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, I want to talk to you a little bit about leadership in New River Valley, because you just went through that not long ago, and see your perspective on leadership and this community in general. In 2023, after 20 years in the beer wholesale industry, Danny Flad decided to branch out on his own and cross the threshold into small business ownership. With longtime experience in sales, marketing, draft services, event management, delivery, and quality assurance, Danny is committed to leading the way for Flad Beverage Solutions to identify your needs and exceed your expectations. Having completed the Micromatic Dispense Specialist, Miller Coors Advanced Draft, and Cicerone CBS programs, Danny has the knowledge and technical experience to provide everything you'll need to make your beverage program and draft equipment working at its best. Flad Beverage Solutions provides quality installation, maintenance, and consultation for all your draft beer and other beverage needs. For more information, visit fladbeveragesolutions.com. That's Flad, F-L-A-D, beveragesolutions.com. Back to the episode. All right, we are back. Before we fully dive back in, I want to thank Grand Home Furnishings for providing the furniture that's here in the room. Help us, a little feel more homely, but also actually make sure that our sound is bouncing off the room really well. So thank you, Grand, for that. We appreciate it. All right, so talking about leadership in New River Valley, you went through last year, and I found it interesting because in that class, and again, not trying to call out any age or anything like that, but we had someone going through the class that was a pretty recent college graduate. And then we had you on the other side that was going through having spent a career elsewhere. What was that perspective like going through now as someone starting like a new chapter of your life, starting out a new business, compared to, you feel like, where you started your career and you moved from the door position?
I was very excited to do Leadership NRV, and I thought it was a great program. I would highly recommend it to anybody. One of the reasons I signed up for that is one, I'm a chamber member. I like to get as much out of the chamber as I can. It's a tool that's only as good as you use it. But and I did get to meet a lot of great people, and I learned a whole lot about leadership styles and whatnot. But I went again from non-leadership positions to leadership positions, whether it was restaurant manager or sales manager at wholesale, you name it. And I noticed generationally a change. And there's no good or bad, but I learned that, like, I wanted to kind of talk to or coordinate with some younger people and figure out what motivates them, because the old sort of like drill sergeant,
Right.
This is how it is. I'm the boss and blah, 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 it's lost in translation, I guess, right now. I don't want to sound like the grumpy old man. I'm sure some of it is always going to be these kids today kind of thing. but no, beyond that. So like, I wanted to know like the differences in what truly motivates people, or younger people specifically, because at the end of the day, things have to get done.
Right.
And you can blame the old guy, you can blame the young guy, young lady, old lady, whatever, you can point fingers all day long.
Right.
But people of all generations need to learn how to communicate well. I mean, most of leadership is just good communication.
Yeah.
Right. And I saw myself in a position where I'm like, I could really use that. And whenever you have an opportunity to learn something new, it's always a good idea to take advantage of that. So I really enjoyed a lot of the classes and all of the trips we took. It was amazing. I really liked it. One of the best experiences for me business-wise. But that was my sort of goal going in. I knew there'd be a lot of young people there, and I would be able to identify, like, what are their feelings about, execution of ideas or coming up with ideas, or where do most of these people see themselves, whether it's in the creative side or the inventive side or execution operations,
Right.
And how do they view management versus leadership, which are two kind of different things, right? And what really inspires them,
Right.
you know?
I really have to commend that, because I think, like you said, it's so easy. It's so easy to go into the generalization and being like, oh, it's all this, it's all that. But so often we see people that do fall to that, versus there's the quote, I'm a big fan of the show and Ted Lasso, where he talks about be curious, not judgmental. And I think that's exactly what you just described. Of, you could easily have said, well, young people don't want to do this, but instead you're going in and saying, let me learn actually why. Because I think that goes such a long way as a leader, and as a manager. They are different, but you have to have that knowledge for both. Within that program and within those things, what part of the community aspect do you think surprised you the most? Because I know the way that our leadership program's built, each is a specific themed day. But I've heard a lot of those that have gone through the program being like, I never knew our community ran this way or did those things.
Well, that's a difficult question. I mean, we did so many things, but
Right.
even from I'll give you two areas, ends of the spectrum. Even from, we went to the Blacksburg Transit, the bus barn or whatever you want to call it, and the sheer logistics of what they have to deal with was just shocking. When you sit down and really think about all of this equipment, all of the maintenance, some of it being electric, some, and, the routes and the route planning. And, I'm familiar with route planning from the wholesale industry. But we were maybe trying to get, 20 something beer routes scheduled on a weekly basis. And this is like, whatever, umpteen bus lines.
Right.
Where nothing goes wrong.
Yeah.
And, it really puts it in perspective when you're sitting there being like, man, where's the bus? It's
Right.
really, but going all the way up to, we had a healthcare day where we visited the hospital. We also, we had a lot of, everything was healthcare dominated, and you see the sheer like craziness that healthcare professionals
Go through, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of respect. I already had a lot of respect, but when you can see it face to face and you go through these places and you're like, wow, this is, so I think it's like anything else, walk a mile in
Yeah.
somebody's shoes. But those two definitely stood out where, it's, you pull back the curtain and you're like, wow, I don't know if I could do this.
Right, yeah.
This is a lot of...
a lot of the moving pieces, legitimately like moving pieces. Yeah, I and that still goes back to the curious, not judgmental piece, because like you said, it's so easy to sit there waiting for the bus and be like, what's going on? When you think about all the things that have had to go into getting that bus there, even 5 minutes late, I mean, that in itself is impressive. So I know you're coming up on, is it your 2-year anniversary with the company? Okay.
Yes.
So how have things kind of transitioned from, I'm starting this brand new company into where you are now?
Things are going well. I sort of kicked off trying to, do a little self promotion and get some jobs rolling. But now it's just rolling in. It's starting to take on a life of its own. So I stay very busy, but I'm enjoying it. I would encourage anybody that's It's not for everybody, but if you feel entrepreneurial minded, it's something I've always thought about, and to just do it. It's kind of frightening, but the reward is there if you can get it done. And there's something about having your own schedule and having your own standards. I think that's key, is just standards and systems. Is just, you can have a lot of good ideas, but if you set up the right standards and you set up the right systems, that's going to be just as important as the concept. But, it's a lot of the old adages, find a need and fill it. And if you're going to do something, do it right. So yeah, that's kind of put me in a good place. And, after so many years, work, it's good to be able to just kick back every now and then and
have the piece where you control that schedule.
Not have to be running around on weekends and middle of the night and stressing about,
Right.
That's not a bad thing, but
right.
I don't want to spend my whole life,
doing that. Yeah. And I think there's a part of business ownership too that is, like you said, the systems and those pieces. There are a lot of great ideas. There are a lot of good concepts for companies, but having the discipline to make yourself go through that process over and over again, I think, is one of the hardest part for small business owners, at least their first time out. I can think back to my first ever company, and it would have done a lot better if I were more rigid about, all right, I need to do this and progress forward. But I think a lot of business owners get caught up in the do part. So, like, you're not, for every single job, you're not the technician that's going out, are you?
Right now, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a one-man show.
Never mind.
It's a one-man show.
But even in that, you still, like you said, you're doing the promotion aspect. So you're not just saying, great, 100% of the time I'm out there doing. You also have to think about the other aspects that come with the company. You still got to make sure that you're paying your taxes. You still got to make sure that you are doing the podcast and building the relationships, right?
It's a lot of balls to juggle, I think one of the big things, to go back to the leadership thing, advice I would give any kind of potential leader or manager, one of the biggest things I took away from that leadership course was, I think people have a tendency to sort of flock like birds of a feather, or they tend to butt heads, right? So it's like the super creative marketing, sales, and like the, it super admin, toe the line,
right.
Every triplicate signatures on everything. It's wrong to think like, man, the admin hates that sloppy salesperson, and the salesperson hates that. No, you need both of those people. You need ideas people. You need your inventors and your engineers that are going to actually vet it and make sure it's correct. And then you need your coaches that are going to go out, and they might not have the greatest ideas. They might not have the best ways to implement them, but they know how to inspire people and get them behind things. And then you need like the data people to follow up and make sure it's working, right? Or it's not. And it's all of those pieces. And those people might not inherently mesh, like personality wise, but business wise, they mesh great.
Yeah,
because they all balance each other out. You don't want a bunch of dreamers blindly
Yeah.
rushing ahead, but you also don't want a bunch of administrators just canceling
Right.
all opportunities because the most efficient way to do something is to do nothing at all.
Right. There's a reason I joke sometimes and say Steve's not the one we let answer the phone, because he is a different personality, and that's great because there are things that Marissa and I are not, and he is, and there are things that he is that we aren't. It's finding the balance, and it's also knowing there's no one right way. There's no one correct personality. Like you said, if you're all of a sudden a room full of one piece, it just becomes an echo chamber, and that's never really good. I don't know if y'all did it through leadership, but I know when I started here at the chamber, Sharon came in and did the Working Genius for us. Mm-hmm. And that was really eye-opening because, one, I'm a big skeptic when it comes to anything like that, but being able to sit down and go, oh, okay, finding those joys and where we are differences really helps find the gaps, really helps where we can help one another, but also helps where we're like, okay, this is where I need more assistance and more of those pieces. I'd recommend, any business owner take that for your team or for just for yourself to have that knowledge of like, okay, maybe this is why I'm getting so burnt out when I'm doing this one piece over and over and over again. So
yeah,
I appreciate that plug for leadership on that standpoint. I didn't even have to ask that one. So
the Working Genius was great.
Yeah.
And, one of the funny things was that everyone takes a Working Genius test, and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of pigeonholes you into what
Right.
you're good at, right? And so then they separate everyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? But everyone already has careers.
Right.
And it's funny, you look around at the groups and like all the realtors are in
Right.
this group, all of the data analysts
Mm-hmm.
are in, this group,
Yeah.
without them
Knowing doing, it's just a matter of those.
it was kind of interesting. But yeah, I think it would really help too on a recruiting sense, right?
Mm.
So you might have like a great person that's personable and good at sales, but you may have a limited budget and already an amazing sales staff.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's when, if you know how all these types mesh together, you'll be like, hey, but, I have your number if I ever need another salesperson. Okay.
Right.
But we really are in need of
This. Yeah.
a warehouse manager that can, or, a delivery person, or, so it helps you, I guess, better identify the balance that you need to make any kind of endeavor successful.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell everybody where they can find, Flad Beverage Solutions. That way, if they want to contact you, bring you out, where they can do that.
So the easiest way would be to just give us a call, 540-998-7971. We do have a website. It is fladbeveragesolutions.com. And the email is info@fladbeveragesolutions.com. I'm pretty busy. We're pretty busy. But yeah, I'm always there to pick up the phone. And, a lot of times if it's just a simple question or some advice, I'm always happy to help out. I can follow it up with a site visit. Most of the clients are commercial. So bars, restaurants, hotels, that kind of thing. Anybody with draft beer that is, or looking to get draft beer, wine on tap, nitro coffee, all of those kind of draft systems. We're happy to help out, whether it's installation, just consulting, or maintenance. We're there for all of your draft beverage needs.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Danny, for being here today. I really appreciate it. Thank you, members, for listening along. We appreciate you being here. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, all those things so that you never miss an episode, never miss some of the other content that we have coming out. In the meantime, make sure you go out, invest, connect, engage, and prosper.